Okay, welcome again, everybody. This is our sixth and final lunchtime webinar, and today we're thinking about carer stress and the impact on well-being. And I was just thinking as I was preparing this about the particular context that we've all been living and working in for the last 18 months or so of COVID, and how that has compounded probably what our normal levels of stress, and has really challenged, I think, for all of us, our ability to live well, stay well, with all of the restrictions on things that we might usually have as lifelines. And so I think maybe more than ever, it's really important for anyone who works in health and social care, but also, again, like I mentioned, for those of us who may have caring responsibilities at home, to really think about our own health, our own well-being, because we can only give out of what we have ourselves. And so some of the emphasis today really is an opportunity to reflect for yourself on how you're managing your stress and your own well-being. And hopefully there'll be some things that you can take away for you. So I was just thinking about who might be here on the call, and that was partly why I was wondering who was in the audience. But often, for many of us, we may have a professional role in caring. But again, like I said, some of us may have parents or children who have extra needs that require caring for them. And obviously some people have full-time caring, unpaid caring roles at home. The whole series that we've been running has been focused on dementia, but really, and so we will be specifically looking at some of the challenges that come from that. But I think really this talk is aimed at any kind of caring, and because I think lots of the issues that come up are common to all. So anyone who's vulnerable. And I think the common denominator in all of this is our humanity. So as human beings, we're caring for other human beings. And that's why a lot of this can be really challenging in kind of emotionally, relationally, and culturally. So that's why it's so important, because we're all vulnerable in some way, whether we are caring as a professional or in more personal ways. So I was just thinking about what is caring, what does it mean to be a carer, and what is the work of caring, and is it physical work? Is it emotional work? Perhaps it's relational work. Most relationships take a lot of work, especially the closer you are to people. Is it a job? Is it a vocation? Is it a choice? Or perhaps you don't feel like you have a choice, if it's someone in your life who's become unwell or is very dependent on you. And so again, I think there's lots of ways of interpreting what we define caring as, and maybe it's all of the above. I really love this slide from, this is Harrow carers, who are part of the voluntary care sector in Harrow, which is where I work as a GP, and I am a trustee on the board of Harrow carers. If that's in some way a conflict of interest, I can declare that. But I really love this slide of their definition of a carer, and this is probably more from the perspective of an unpaid informal carer, but giving medicine and time and companionship, keeping appointments and records and tempers, dealing with doctors and nurses and pharmacists and workers, filling forms and fridges and silences, washing bodies and laundry and dishes, benefits agencies and care workers, and a lack of sleep. And I think it's just, for me, it's really quite hard hitting on that kind of just how much caring can affect your whole life, if you are an unpaid carer. And it's worth, I think, for any of us who are professionals in this field, remembering and having that mindset about how it might be impacting, how the caring role can impact on carers, in terms of the way that we might interact with them as professionals, the kind of responsibilities and stressors that they might have as carers, and how we can have kind of a compassionate approach when we go to support them, whatever our interaction with them might be. So I wanted to just think of, obviously carer stress is part of the title, but obviously there's a reason why people have caring roles, and there is clearly a joy in caring, and I thought it might be good to start off just thinking about that. So even though you might, like I said, things can get forced upon us by circumstances of life, there's also a reason, I was thinking, why parents get up in the middle of the night to tend to their crying child, or the reason that someone's wife of 60 years will care for their husband to the best of their ability at home, and it's because of love. It's because of the foundational value that we have as humans in our interactions, in our social connections, and that's often what gives life its meaning, is the people that we're in relationship with, and also really importantly our ability to contribute. And I think this is probably true for professionals in caring roles, and I know I can definitely say that's true for me, but being able to offer support and help and care is actually something that gives me something in terms of my sense of contribution to society and adding value to people's lives. At least that would be my aspiration. And I think that we know that one of the 5 ways to well-being that the government have outlined as being things that help our health is to give, and there's an evidence base behind the science of giving that actually it contributes to a sense of personal meaningfulness and purpose and achievement, and that's why actually it is more blessed to give than receive. And I think this quote from a book by Miriam Subarana again helps us just think a bit more widely about caring. But caring is much more than attending in illness and pain. Caring is loving, appreciating, listening, accepting, feeling, being present, embracing, understanding, sharing, accompanying, healing, co-creating. Caring is giving out of joy. But I say all that with obviously the recognition that there's a huge cost in caring as well, which is probably the main reason that we're looking at this today. And I was just thinking about at its most intense context, the repeated and continuous exposure. I'm thinking of our colleagues in care homes who are exposed on a daily basis to trauma, loss, despair, disfigurement, pain, suffering, struggle, and death. And that links to this idea of emotional labour of the work of caring. And this would obviously be shared by those who are in informal caring roles. And there's these 2 concepts in health and social care of compassion fatigue and burnout. And I thought it was important to just touch on those today. And it's really a kind of a loss of your ability to respond with nurture and to respond with empathy. And that they're getting increasingly more common, and I think particularly with the acute times of COVID, that was a real issue for those particularly in hospitals and in the acute sector. But compassion, there is a difference. So compassion fatigue is usually becoming preoccupied or very affected by the trauma or the emotional stress of other people, which causes a kind of secondary traumatic experience or stress in the helper, and it can come on very quickly. So you could have a patient or someone you're looking after that you have an encounter with, and it could, all in the course of one day, you can come away if you had a repeated few of those at the end of the day feeling like I've got nothing left to give. Whereas burnout tends to come on over more of a sense of time, and is generally a sense of being worn out and completely disconnected, numbed to everything that you might be seeing. It can affect any profession, and is often compounded by work-related aspects. So perhaps the culture of the workplace that you're in, whether that be a lack of felt support, a lack of resources, or too much work, that can all contribute to a sense of burnout as well, where you feel you're just not able to give the kind of care that is needed. And I was also thinking about the opportunity costs, and perhaps this is more related to those in unpaid caring roles, but again, something for us to be mindful of as if we're professionals in this field. But often carers have to give up their chance of their own fulfillment in life, in terms of opportunities to have a job, opportunities for social life, opportunities to do exercise, if the demands on them are so great. And there's often reported self-neglect, sadly, in those who are carers, not able to attend to their own health because of their caring responsibilities. So really important for us to be mindful of this, and that's partly why carers are highlighted as a real vulnerable group that we need to be taking extra care of in all of our work, particularly in primary care. So just a deeper dive into the impact of caring on health. So this is from a report in 2015. It was a survey of 5,000 carers, and 84% of whom, this is all as a result of the caring role. You know, a high majority feel more stressed. So clearly caring is a stressful thing. 78% felt more anxious. 55% felt they suffered from depression as a result of the caring role. And 83% felt their physical health has suffered. And we know that around another study I looked at, it was nearly 40% put off their own medical care, seeking help and getting the treatment that they needed because of their felt responsibility for their care, for the ones that they're caring from. And just a note on young carers, so those under 18, 38% of them report having a mental health problem, but only about half of them actually receive any additional help for this. So let's bear in mind those people who might be caring for people at home in their household. And I think it's always really important to stay curious whenever you're treating anyone, to think more widely of their context at home, who's around, and what are their relationships like with those people. And just to say, if you have any comments in the chat, oh, Manda's already just said that, thanks Manda, yeah, please write them in. I will be asking, there will be a couple of interactive parts coming up where I'd love to get your contributions in the chat. Sorry, so who is caring for the carers? That's the real question that comes up in my mind as a result of what we've just thought about in terms of the impact of care on health. And this slide is sadly blank because I'm not sure that we are doing as good a job as we can to care for carers, and perhaps today will be thought-provoking for some of us in terms of being able to try and meet that need better, and perhaps it's about actually connecting us as caregivers, and also the caregivers that we come across in our work to the supports and resources that are out there. And obviously I will come on at the end to point out that there are local resources in each borough. For example, I've mentioned Harrow Carers in Harrow. I know that in Hammersmith and Fulham, the local authority have carer networks. I also know that a lot of the kind of peer support has been interrupted by COVID, and so it's kind of an extra layer of difficulty there. But again, keeping this in our minds, who's caring for the carers, and if we're the carers, where are we being cared for? Because ultimately, like I mentioned, it's a human need to have felt care in your life. So I just wanted us to think as a group really about what is stressful in your life. And I suppose the next chunk of this session really is thinking about stress management. So we've established that caring is stressful. And I wanted us to just think about for ourselves, how are we managing stress, and how might we do that better? And I don't know if you're able to put in the chat what things what things can be stressful in life. You don't have to share anything hugely personal, but I've put these basic areas down. It might be things in our relationships, and that could be our work relationships, it could be our home relationships. Stressful, could it something in your work life? So is it the actual work you do, the kind of people that you interact with, the culture of your workplace that I mentioned already? Is it financial things? So lots of people, are you somebody who you're not sure if you can pay your bills at the end of the month, or what you would do if you got an unexpected bill? Maybe housing issues, whether it's difficulties with neighbours, or whether in my house, and you might see them flying around, but we've got a fly outbreak in my neighbourhood, so they are very irritating, and I've seen a few go across the screen every now and again. But things that are going on around you, maybe you've got building works and you're working from home, that can be really stressful, hearing all of that noise. Or maybe health issues in your own life, or people who you love, that can often feel outside of your control. But yeah, anyone got anything else to add to that in the chat? Things that are stressful. Maybe wearing a mask in this heat is stressful. I'd love to hear some of the things that that are affecting us all. Do we have anyone brave enough to share? Future plans. Yeah, difficult, isn't it? As I don't know if any of you have managed to book a holiday, but that's a real risky game at the moment, isn't it? Or even longer into the future, or the future of the world. Personal time away. Yeah, that can be so difficult, can't it? Getting respite, having time to, and we're definitely going to come on to thinking about the importance of that, although knowing the importance of it doesn't necessarily make it easier to get, but absolutely, I think feeling caught in the daily grind, day in, day out, can be really stressful. Thank you. Anything else? Life stressors that we can think about? Or you can keep sharing. The next slide is interactive as well, so you can get ready. So what we've just spoken about here is stress. Another word for them is stressors. So the things that can trigger stress or provoke stress are stressors. And I think what I'm trying to get across is that we all have stressors, and they'll be different for each of us. So each one of us have a different context, a different, different work role, different work culture, different home life, different set of circumstances. So, but this is common to every single one of us. There are things out there that can be stressful. So, and I wanted to just particularly make this apply for dementia, just because that's like I said, the series context that we're in. But we talked last time about behaviours that challenge in dementia, which are also known as BPSD, behavioural and psychological symptoms of dementia. And as you can see on the slide here, often people with dementia can suffer with agitation, wandering, depression and low mood that can cause them to be very apathetic or withdrawn, not wanting to eat or to interact. Psychosis, so that could be in the form of auditory or visual hallucinations, screaming and calling out, aggression, sexual disinhibition, and then other things that are very common, inappropriate urinating or defecation, taking off clothes, repeating yourself, hoarding things, hiding things, trying to eat things that you can't eat, not wanting personal care. And if you just think about that list, how potentially stressful that would be if you are the one caring or trying to provide care for somebody in that situation. So these, I would class all of these as stressors. So again, I want you to just do some self-reflection, and I'd love to hear this on the chat, because it is more interesting to hear a shared experience of this. But how do you experience stress for yourself? And I'm thinking physically, so what symptoms might you feel in your body, and how do you recognize when you're feeling stressed? And it could be emotionally, so what kind of feelings do you have? And again, I'd just love to see what anyone who can share common symptoms of how stress might manifest for you. I know for me, I can feel myself tense up inside. I can feel my heart goes faster. I can feel that I get distracted easily. It's difficult to concentrate. Thank you, Fiona. So feeling worn out, tired. I relate to that. Kind of can't be bothered feeling. Anyone else got any ways that you experience stress? I'm assuming you all do. Just thinking about how it might show up, or situations where you have felt stressed recently. What did you feel? Okay, I think everyone's poor sleep. That's such an important one. Thank you, Shuli. Yeah, I think often sleep can be affected if we've got things on our mind, can't it? So kind of linked to this sense of anxiety, things not being able to turn off your brain. I think that's such an important one, particularly because sleep is so important for our well-being. So yeah, difficulty to concentrate. Thank you. So again, this kind of this effect of stress on our thinking and our ability to process and make decisions. I don't know if you've ever heard of, there's an acronym called HALT, HALT, and it stands for hungry, angry, late and tired. And the recommendation is that you don't make important decisions if you are experiencing any of those conditions. So if you're hungry, angry, late or tired, you're predisposed to stress. And so it's best to either try and meet one of those needs, whether that's eating something, that's obviously easy to fix. It may be that you just need a good night's sleep, so you might have to wait to do that. But yeah, those are conditions that as humans make us vulnerable to exaggerated stress responses. What is a stress response? So here I'm just thinking about the fact that there's a stimulus. So we've talked about, for example, if you're caring for somebody, you're in a caring role for somebody who has some of the behavioural symptoms of dementia that can be called challenging. Those behaviours are the stimulus. But something happens within us that causes us to have a stress response, and it's this gap between the stimulus and the response that I'm really interested in, partly because this gap is actually we can change it, and so the thing I'm trying to get across here is that the stimulus, or the thing that happens before it becomes a stress, before the stressor becomes stressful, we have to perceive something as a threat. So there's something that goes on very quickly, usually on a subconscious level in our brains, when we come across something potentially stressful, and we make a decision that there's some kind of threat, and our judgment of our own ability to meet the demand of the threat is what causes us to either feel stressed or to feel not stressed. So if we don't feel like we have what it takes to meet this, then we will end up feeling stressed. And there's an involuntary activation of, sorry, I've put the I haven't told you what this stands for, the fight and flight response, which I'm going to go on to talk about in a moment. So basically, there's something that happens inside your body as soon as your mind or your thoughts identify a threat, your nervous system is activated, and that's something that happens automatically. And that's where some of the feelings and the emotionally and physically, that's where these come from, and that's what impacts ultimately our behavior and our choice as a result of those. So I just wanted to remind us, and maybe you're not familiar with this, but for those of us who have done any kind of human biology or physiology, this is a picture of our nervous system, and there are two main strands to it. One's called parasympathetic and one's called sympathetic, and our sympathetic part is what you've probably what's more commonly known as the fight and flight state. And so this is where your body is aroused, ready to either fight the enemy or the threat, or to flight, so to run away from that thing. And there is actually another stance, which is freeze. So sometimes it's fight, flight and freeze. So these state, which means that you can end up in this state of paralysis, not freezing, not being sure what to do. And this whole system is run on two hormones, adrenaline and cortisol, which fly around the body, and as you can see, affect nearly every organ that we have. And the body has this amazing but complex set of neurons or nerve pathways that connect the brain down the spine to every single organ in the body. And as you can see, you might find somebody who's in a state of arousal or acute stress, and they might have their pupils can become wide. You can get a dry mouth because it stops the production of saliva. You might find your heart racing. You might find your stomach. You might feel the butterflies in your stomach. Sometimes you can get, if you've ever had to do an exam, you might find that you get diarrhea because it can activate your intestine symptoms. You might feel like you need the loo because the bladder's affected. So basically, I'm trying to communicate, there's a hugely physical response to something in our brains where we've decided that there's some kind of stress or threat. And in contrast, the parasympathetic system is our rest and digest. So this is the state of being or calm that happens when we are resting and hopefully when we are digesting. So this is the optimal state to be in when you're eating, and this is where we're trying to get to. As somebody mentioned about this need to break away from the stressful things and find your kind of inner peace, your inner rest, which is different from just stopping being busy or active. There's something about entering into this state of where your nervous system is able to relax, and you get again all of the kind of opposite effects. So your heart rate slows down, your blood pressure goes down, you're able to, it helps you digest your food better because your gut is affected. So there's these hugely physical components of stress, and that's why often stress is felt in the body. So I'm sharing this because I'm trying to get us, one of the aims is really for us to be more self-aware about when we are becoming stressed, and also to know that our bodies are poor discriminators whether something is a physical threat or an emotional threat. So you know, in the early days of man, often threats came from wild beasts, you know, and the threat of those attacking. And actually in our modern life, that's not really a threat anymore. I mean, we're living with a global threat to our well-being, aren't we, with COVID? It's a very different kind of threat, and yet it can still produce the same kind of physical response. So your body's not able to tell the difference between different types of threats. It just knows that you feel threatened in some way. So I wanted for us to think really importantly about how can we purposely activate our peripheral nervous system, so that state of calm, because this is one of the key ways to empower ourselves to go from that sense of arousal, the fight or flight or freeze, which is unfortunately what so many of us live in chronically now. And a stress response is useful if it's to a definite threat, like if you went across the road and you suddenly saw a car was speeding and you were able to jump back in time and preserve yourself, your body would go into a state of arousal to enable you to have those quick reactions, and that would be a good use of your stress response. You know, we have it for a reason, but the problem comes when we are constantly in that state of arousal, and that can come by again, like this modern lifestyle that we have of continual stressors on our like these assaults on our being and on our time and on our attention, and it could be so there's a concept called micro stressors, which is the tiny things, even like the alarm going off in the morning is a stressful event, notifications on your phone, incoming emails, incoming messages can be threatening for us, particularly if they're from somebody who we've got a difficult interpersonal relationship with, or there's some kind of conflict going on. Stressors can be the pressure that we're often living under in these days. So having all of, you know, the pressure of time to go and pick up children after work and finish your work on time when you've got no when you don't feel like you've got control over your finish time because it's unpredictable, or the stress of not being able to make your bill payments, that kind of hanging over you day in, day out. So we live very stressful lives in contrast to ancestors before us, and that's reflected in data that shows that we're the most stressed generation that's ever been, and people are understandably reporting that, and the impact that has on our mental health, and increased rates of anxiety and depression, or the impact on our sleep and other things that people have mentioned. So I wanted to encourage you and give you hope that we can combat this through purposefully activating the calm side of our nervous system. And there are so many things that we can do to help ourselves. And again, just as chronic stress comes in could be small and subtle forms through the day, we will need to create a lifestyle and habits that enable us to access peace and quiet and laughter, and the things that I'm going to share in a moment. So this isn't a one-time quick fix. This is about building into our lives things that keep us well and help us to stay healthy and well. And all of these have evidence behind them, and they're all easily accessible, I would say, in some way or another. There'll be things that you know as an individual are more helpful for you, and I would just say start there. Find the things that you know. When do I feel most at ease? When do I feel most okay with the world? And you know, maybe it's a happy place you can go to, maybe it's a piece of music that you listen to, maybe it's a person that's a safe place for you, you know, maybe it's going into your room, closing the door, turning off your phone, but finding what makes a difference for you in your life is really important, especially if you're a caregiver. So if we think about this list, and it's not exhaustible, so breathing, a really easy thing that we can all do at anywhere, anytime. And so this is a different from the breathing that hopefully you're all doing right now, which you're probably not even thinking about until I mentioned it. But deliberately breathing slowly has an impact to enable your parasympathetic nervous system to kick in. And so there's a technique called 3-4-5, which is where you can breathe in for 3 seconds, hold your breath for 4, and breathe out for 5. And if you practice doing that, you can do that while you're in the middle of stressful situations. And the more you practice this, the quicker your body will learn to respond to it. And so that can help you, if your heart's racing, that can help you feel like you're able to slow down. Laughing, again, amazing that there's evidence, but deep belly laughter releases endorphins. So these are the body's natural painkillers. And also eating, exercise, and sex can release endorphins as well. But laughter, so finding something you find really funny, or a person or a comedy, being able to see the funny side of life can really help, again, to activate that part of the nervous system. And you can't hold on to your negative feelings if you laugh. You have to let go of something. So that can be a really good therapy to make ourselves feel better if we're stressed. Exercise, which I'm sure we're all aware of, even walking, even just normal paced walking, puts us into a state of relaxation. And so my advice as a GP is always just start somewhere. So whatever you do so far, well done. Try and do a bit more, because exercise is one of the best preventative medicines that we have, better than any drug that we can give you, to reduce your risk of obesity and cancer and diabetes, and Alzheimer's, and to give you relief from a stressful day. Meditation, so that can be, for some people it's a spiritual practice, for others it's just a connection to the present moment, like mindfulness, and to that similar to the breathing exercise. But the aim of this really is to enable your mind to slow down, so all of those racing anxious thoughts, just being able to put that aside, and to enter a place of focus and stillness in your mind. Nature and green space, I really love this. There's a shape within nature, they're called fractals, that put us into a relaxation state. And so I work in a pretty urban environment, but I make sure that there is one path I can take that takes me through like a green field, and I deliberately go that way, and particularly at the moment, to expose myself to as much green as I can within my working day. So that's how I try and find that green space and nature. Social contacts, so hugely important, and which is why COVID has been so cruel and had such a detrimental effect on people's felt well-being. But we know that the opposite, social isolation, is and loneliness is more dangerous for our health than smoking 15 cigarettes a day, and it reduces life expectancy. So social contact, real connection with people, again, can put us into that resting state. And I'm going to caveat touch, it has to be safe touch, obviously, and I know that can be a mixed, people have had different experiences with this, but right from infancy, touch is one of the first senses that we develop and we learn to respond to, and safe human touch releases serotonin, which is our feel good chemical, and which lots of antidepressants try and boost our levels of serotonin. Safe touch can reduce our heart rate, our blood pressure, our cortisol. It activates our peripheral nervous system. So and you know, not everyone's a huge touch person. I know I am, and having a hug really helps me. Like if I'm feeling anxious or stressed, a hug can really help soothe me. And again, I've really missed that during the pandemic. And then lastly, and sorry, just another side on touch, even having a dog has been shown to, there's a study on people who'd had cardiovascular, had heart attacks, and those who got a dog afterwards had much less risk of a further heart attack. And it wasn't just because they were walking and exercising more. They proved it was actually because of the connection with the dog, and part of that was the touch. And then finally, yoga. So again, this has proven benefits because of the association with relaxation and breathing, and allowing your body to be in a state of relaxation, and stretching out all those muscles obviously just makes you feel good. So hopefully there's something in that list that you think, oh, I could do a bit more of that, or maybe it's helped you understand why certain people or places either stress you or help you recover. But for us, being mindful of those things as caregivers is really important. And I just wanted to just share this quote that Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor, gave. So if you think back to my slide where we had the stimulus that led to the response, he says, between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So again, my encouragement to us is to realize that we have a choice to make. And sometimes it doesn't feel like choice because we are habitual creatures and we've learned to respond to things in different ways. But again, one of my encouragements is for us to become a bit more self-aware and hopefully recognize when we're feeling threatened, and enable ourselves to respond in different ways, which is what I'm going to come on to. So I wanted to share the importance of our perception. And like I've mentioned, in any situation or event that happens, you make a subconscious or conscious assessment of whether there is a threat or not to you. And this will vary between us as individuals, because something I find potentially stressful won't be the same for somebody else. If the stressful event or if the situation feels to us like there's no threat there, then obviously we won't have a stress response. But if we decide that there is some kind of threat to our well-being, we have another assessment to make. And this is essentially whether you can cope or not. So do you have what you need to meet this threat? And your ability to feel like you can cope will be hugely impacted by how you're doing at that time on that day. And as I mentioned, the hungry, angry, late and tired, you're going to feel much less able to cope if you're in any one of those states of being. But there might be things where you think, okay, it's like sometimes I have consultations with people who I can tell it's going to be challenging as it goes on, but maybe I've met this person before, or I've met this situation before, and I feel I can draw on my inner resources and think, okay, this is not necessarily going to be easy, but I feel like I can do it. And that gives me the kind of positive stress. So it gives me a bit of an adrenaline boost to use for that situation. But if I've come to a conclusion that I can't cope, so perhaps it's in the context of somebody, just thinking of in a care home, someone who's shouting out continually, maybe they've been incontinent again, or all over the floor, it needs cleaning up again, there's someone else demanding your time, you're running late with your job because you've had to do extra things, maybe you had a stressful morning at home. These all contribute to your sense of, I just can't cope with this one more thing. And that's the kind of negative stress that is so damaging for our health, particularly when it's ongoing over a period of time. And I wanted to just to touch here on the importance of our sense of control, because I think that, and if I just go back quickly, there's perhaps a third response to the second assessment, which is actually this thing that's threatening me isn't something I can do anything about. And I think that's really where we've got to with a lot of the global situation that we're in, or the state of national lockdown isn't something that we can directly impact. And so there's something really important here about us realizing what we can and what we can't change or do anything about. And the one thing that you can control is yourself. And that's what self-control is. And part of that comes from being able to separate, this is in my area of influence and this isn't. And as you go outward on the circle here, you come across a sort of decreasing ability to have influence or impact. So your environment, for example, I mean, many of you might have opened your windows to let some air in, or you've probably turned off your heating because you don't need that to be on. But those are ways that we can influence or impact our environment to make it more comfortable. Whereas obviously there are lots of things that you can't change, like the building you work in, for example. Your workload. So again, this may feel at first glance like something that's not in your control, but perhaps you are able to feed that back to your manager or to your team, or perhaps you're able to share some of it, or get help or support, and to enable you to feel like it's more manageable. The behaviour of others isn't really our job to control or to manage, but I would say that you can influence it often through the way that you are. So if I am able to remain calm and positive and compassionate, it's probably going to enable the person that I'm around to be able to do the same. Whereas if I'm stressed and irritated and anxious or angry, then that can provoke the similar feelings in others. And that's really important in this kind of caring role, particularly for those with dementia, because you often get a lot of mirroring, that one person's stress becomes another person's stress. And then I've put the pandemic on the edge because it's just not something that is worth our time and energy trying to fix or solve or even worry about, because there's not much that we can do directly. And so the idea here is to just be able to separate yourself from what is and what isn't within your power. I really love this, the serenity part of the Serenity Prayer, but God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference, because it really just embodies that sense of I'm going to give my energy and my attention to things that I can make a positive difference to, and the things I can't, I'm just going to let go of. And there can be a real sense of release and relief of pressure if you're able to do that. And again, that's through practice and through self-awareness that we can learn to do this. Things that help us when we're in particularly stressful lives or situations or caregiving roles. Your support network, which I've touched on, is hugely important. Your sense of control, which I've mentioned. Your attitude and your outlook. So whether you're a glass half full or a glass half empty actually makes a big difference to your felt sense of well-being in your life. Your ability to deal with your emotions, so how much emotional regulation you're able to do, and if that's difficult for you, I know it's something I've worked on personally, and there are things that you can do to try and help improve that. And then your knowledge and preparation, so there might be a particular day in your working week or time of day for a person that you're caring with that is particularly it's particularly challenging, and you can predict that I'm going to feel more stressed on this day because of the various things that happen. And so sometimes just even knowing that and being prepared for it mentally can help us to go in and make sure we've slept the night before, make sure we've got access to food and drink with us. And then my last slide here was just to think about support for ourselves. So like I mentioned, I know that this audience is probably from across Northwest London and beyond. So I don't know what exactly is going to be local for you, but there will be resources to support the wellbeing of health and social care staff, and for informal carers. There are, like I mentioned, networks often run by local authority, plus the voluntary sector often have charitable support, or whether it's just peer support from your own networks through social media, or from your colleagues. Those are all really important things to access. There are some links here, and you'll be able to get access to the slides just specifically for those who are caring for people at home with dementia. So there's or for carers, so there's a Samaritans line specifically for health and social care staff who might have been having a stressful time, and then there are 2 support links there for anyone who is wondering about more dementia specific support. But that's the end of my presentation. If anyone's got any questions, please feel free to ask. And I think Mandek has a link for some feedback that we would love. If you would like a copy of the slides or the recording, if you complete that, we will be able to send that out to you. But thank you so much for your attention, and happy to ask any questions if you put them in the chat.
Thank you very much, Ellie. Hi, everyone. So very quickly, if you are able to click the link that I've put in the chat, it'll take 1 minute, but what it does is allows us to be able to contact you to share the slides that Ellie has produced with the incredible resources, but also allow you to be able to keep in touch if you would like on any upcoming workshops that we offer here at Hammersmith and Fulham that is going to be available to everyone else. Is there any questions for Ellie? All right. All the slides are sent out at the end. So we collate all the information to everyone. So we send singular emails to people with all the resources. Each of them are dated. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording.